Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Miodo-Gugis with Profound Way. Today, I want to talk about meditation and mindfulness. And you could say, well, we always talk about that. But this is a little different because we're going to talk about the difference between meditation and mindfulness. In popular culture, these terms are used interchangeably very frequently, but they're not really the same thing. So let's take a look at how they're similar and what distinguishes them from each other. So first, meditation, because it's a much broader concept. There are many, many different ways to meditate. And arguably, mindfulness is one of them. You could say mindfulness is one type of meditation, and you would not be wrong. It's just such an extremely popular one that kind of has its own category. And even in the time of the Buddha, it had its own category. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha differentiated between meditation and mindfulness as two different practices. So meditation is where we're engaging in a formal activity in order to allow the mind to settle. We're not trying to force the mind to settle. We're not trying to force it to stop thinking. Because newsflash, you can't force your subconscious mind to do anything. Okay? My father was a professional hypnotherapist, and this is one of the cornerstones of hypnotherapy and hypnosis, is that you can't make the mind do anything. You can lead it along, and hopefully it will cooperate. So that's what we're doing in meditation. We're allowing the mind to settle. Usually we're using a focus for that. There are a few types of meditation that don't use a focus, but the vast majority of them do. So what do I mean by a focus? I mean that you're thinking about something in order to not think about everything. It's like your mind is a 2-year-old, and you give it a coloring book and a box of crayons, and you say, hey, please go over and sit in the corner and color, draw me a pretty picture while mommy or daddy, auntie, uncle, whoever is over here doing this other thing. And that will occupy the 2-year-old for however long, right? Sometimes not very long at all, sometimes for quite a while. And that's how our minds are. We give them something to occupy them because it is their job to think, the way it's the eye's job to see and the ear's job to hear. The mind wants to think. That's its purpose. That's its function. That's what it was built for. So we allow it to in meditation, but on a specific thing of our choosing. And it then lets all the other layers and processes that are going on begin to settle down and relax and slow. So in meditation, the activity, if you will, is the meditation itself. And the focus is this passive thing over here that's happening in the background, in the corner, where the child is with the coloring book. Mindfulness is paying attention. That's really all that it means. The Buddha taught 4 foundations of mindfulness, and each of those has a lot of subparts. But what it amounts to is paying attention on different things. Mindfulness of the body. Mindfulness of feelings. Do I like this? I don't like it. I feel neutral about it. Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Mindfulness of mind. What's going on in my internal processes? I'm just going to watch that. And mindfulness of the Dharma, meaning his teachings, where you do some contemplation on those teachings. And now there's additional things that we can be mindful about. But in mindfulness, we are paying attention. And the activity, if you will, is the thing that we're paying attention to. And we're paying just bare attention to it in mindfulness. So that is a more passive process. Meditation involves more focus and concentration, whereas mindfulness is a more relaxed state where we're paying bare attention. Now let me give you an example of each one, and I think that will hopefully make it clearer. We're going to talk about working with the breath, because that is the main way most people on the planet meditate most of the time. 25 years after the Buddha became the Buddha, the awakened one, had this huge epiphany, his cousin was talking to him and said, do you still practice? And he said, people are asking me, do you still practice? What should I tell them? And the Buddha said, yes, I still practice. And his cousin Ananda said, well, what do you practice? And the Buddha said, mindfulness of breathing. So working with the breath is very powerful. It's in motion, and so that works as a good meditative focus because it gives us something to look at. Are we inhaling or exhaling? Where are we on the breath cycle? So that helps it to be a good solid focus for meditation. And it's always with us. We don't have to go get a candle. We don't have to find a match to light the candle so we can then gaze at the candle flame. We don't do, we can, but in this example, we're working with the breath. We don't have to do an open sky gazing meditation, which is easier when there's not jet planes going overhead. We're not relying on any external factors. We carry our breath with us all the time, and it's always moving. Perfect focus for meditation. Great object of mindfulness. What's the difference? When I meditate on my breath, I am concentrating on my breath. I am aware of when I'm breathing in, I'm aware of when I'm breathing out, but I'm frequently also regulating the length or depth of my breath, or both. One example is the ancestor meditation that I first learned from an American Zen master who was of Korean descent around 2003. And then 20 years later, when I was in Seoul, South Korea, I learned it again from a Korean Zen master in a Korean temple. And it goes like this. Breathing in, you ask the great question, the word head. What is this? And you breathe into about a count of 3. You breathe out a little bit more than twice as long, so say a count of 7, and you answer that question with don't know. And the purpose of the don't know is to keep an open mind and remain teachable. I don't know. Except we even leave the I out of it, right? We don't want to make a concrete sense of self. So just don't know. Don't know. So in that example of meditation, we're regulating the breath. So many beats in, so many beats out. We're controlling it. We're also working with this great question. So there's, if you will, 2 different things that we're using as a focus for this meditation, the breath and the great question. And that really helps us then to pay attention to what we're doing and not drift too much. Now, mindfulness of breathing, on the other hand, we're not going to regulate the breath at all. We're not going to control it. We're just going to watch it. In a complete breath cycle, there are 4 parts. You breathe in, and then there's a little pause where you hold the breath, and then you breathe out. And there's another little pause where you suspend the breath, and then you breathe in again. When we're practicing mindfulness of breathing, we're aware of where we are on that cycle. Or you may choose to do mindfulness of breathing a little different way. You may say, well, I'm going to pay attention to where I feel the breath in my body. Do I feel it in my nostrils? All those little hairs in there we have to filter out foreign objects. They sway in the breeze of our gentle breath. Can you feel that? Or maybe you can feel it in your throat. And sometimes you feel that as a temperature change, as cooler air comes in and warmer air comes back out. Maybe you feel that in the rise and fall of the chest. Or maybe you're more of a belly breather and you feel it more in your abdomen as that expands and contracts. And there's other places you could experience the breath as well. This is not a complete list. And you may experience it in more than one place simultaneously. That's another way to do mindfulness of breathing. But you're not doing deep breaths. You're just breathing. Whatever your normal breath speed and cycle is, you're just observing that. Now, it will tend to slow down a little bit as you practice mindfulness in any one given session because you're sitting still. And your body doesn't need as much oxygen to sit still as it does even to carry on a conversation. I'm using more oxygen talking to you than I do when I'm sitting in mindfulness. You're using more oxygen just listening to me than you would if you were only practicing mindfulness of breathing and not also listening to me. So it's normal that your breath will slow a little bit, and that's something else you can observe because you're just paying attention in mindfulness. That's the primary difference between the two. Both of them are used to help us relax, lower stress, reduce our blood pressure, all kinds of wonderful physical benefits, lower the levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone that are in the blood, activate that part of our nervous system that says, let's rest or digest. We don't need to be ready for fight or flight. Let's put that on hold. We don't need that. Put a pause on that. Let's just rest and digest. That helps to calm the nervous system. And maybe that's why you decide to meditate or practice mindfulness, is for the physical benefits. And if that is your entire goal, wonderful. Sometimes people have a goal that's beyond that, such as addressing anxiety or some sort of compulsive behavior or hyperactivity, all of which can be helped with mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness specifically has been studied a lot more for this, but when you think of mindfulness as one type of meditation, that makes sense because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to meditate. And mindfulness is mindfulness. It's paying attention. The only thing that changes is what are you paying attention to? So when you're doing that, it's easier to say, okay, well, let's study mindfulness. Researchers could say, well, let's study shamatha, or let's study vipassana. And there have been some of vipassana. I'm not sure about shamatha, probably. Let's study shikantaza. Let's study nature of mind. So there's all these different types of things. Let's do some studies. But mindfulness seems to have the most scientific information behind it of all of the different types of meditation, due largely to the work of one person, and that's Jon Kabat-Zinn. He introduced things like mindfulness-based stress reduction, which you may have heard of. So that's been studied a lot, and we know it works for these things. Beyond all of the physical and psychological and emotional levels that meditation and mindfulness can help us with, there's also the spiritual level. These practices ultimately make us better people. And you might think, well, how does that happen? Well, let me give it to you in a nutshell. Both of these practices train you in noticing when thoughts arise. Remember what I said at the beginning, we're not trying to suppress our thoughts, we're not trying to force them down. What we do is notice them and then go back to our meditation or our mindfulness process. We return to the focus in meditation, or if we're not using one, to our meditation in general, or we return to paying attention to whatever we're paying attention to in our mindfulness practice. And that's it. The 2-year-old gets tired of coloring, comes over and shows us the latest drawing, and we notice that. And we say, thank you, sweetheart, that's really nice. And we turn the page. Hey, look at this drawing. This looks really interesting. Would you color this one for me, please? And the 2-year-old says, sure, and goes back to the corner and resumes coloring, allowing us to return to our meditation or mindfulness practice. As we learn to notice when we're thinking, we begin to catch our thoughts even when we're not meditating or practicing mindfulness. off the mat, as the saying goes, out there in the daily world. We notice when we have these thoughts. And when you notice them, now you can begin to make shifts if you choose to. So if you notice you're having, talked about this one before because it's so juicy, the revenge fantasy. I should have said this to that woman in accounting. When she said that to me, I should have said this to her. Tomorrow I'm going to say this to her. But because you've been meditating or being mindful, you notice and you go, oh. And then you can decide, well, yeah, I want to stick it to that woman in accounting, so I'm going to have this fantasy. Or, I don't want to be that person. I'm just going to let that go. And that's where the shift begins to becoming a better person. You notice your thoughts. You decide which ones you want to harbor and which ones you do not. The old story about there's the two dragons, which one grows bigger, the one you feed. That comes from the East. Native American culture has one about wolves. Doesn't matter what it is. You have these two competing thoughts in your mind. Which one is going to inform who you become? Who are you going to be tomorrow? What type of thoughts are you feeding? So once you've practiced meditation or mindfulness for a while, how long is a while? I don't know. It depends on you. Once you've been doing that for a while, then you start to notice these shifts, and you can begin to make better, wiser, more compassionate choices. That's where the spiritual layer comes in. So I hope that that's helpful to you in differentiating between meditation and mindfulness. Meditation is more broad. Generally, there's many, many types. Generally speaking, we're working with a focus, and we are focusing on something, our breath, a candle flame, a mantra, a sunset, whatever it is, and we're focusing on that, and then that is allowing us to let all the other thoughts go. And in mindfulness, we're simply paying attention. We're choosing one thing. Sometimes multiple things will happen, and that's okay. And you can notice multiple things. But we're picking one as the thing that we're practicing mindfulness with. Both are wonderful practices. Both will help you find your own path up the mountain. So enjoy your practice. If you have some thoughts on this, please comment and let me know. Do you have a specific meditation type that you do that you enjoy? My personal go-to is the ancestor meditation that I described to you earlier. It's one of the first ones that I learned. And I also do metta or loving kindness meditation, which is repeating phrases of benediction and blessing to various beings. The self, loved ones, friends, neutral people, and people we don't like at all, and then all beings. So I practice loving kindness a lot. I practice the ancestor meditation a lot. I don't do traditional mindfulness that much, to be honest. I do it sometimes. I like to mix it up. So what do you do? What are your go-to meditations or mindfulness practices? And what are your thoughts? Thanks for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.